Okay, so we're diving deep today into the electric vehicle market.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much information is out there, from like current sales figures
Uh-huh.
all the way to like the hardcore tech of future batteries.
Absolutely.
So I'm really hoping you can kind of unpack this whole EV world for us.
Oh, do my best.
You know where it is now, where it's going,
Yeah.
without getting too lost in all the jargon.
Right.
Just the good stuff.
The highlights.
Yeah.
Not sure.
So kind of like the big picture first.
Okay.
When we look at the global EV market, I mean,
Yeah.
it was valued at like $418.2 billion in 2024.
Right.
But then you look at the projections for 2050,
Uh-huh.
and it's supposed to hit something crazy like $73 trillion
Yeah.
with a T.
Almost $73 trillion.
Almost $73 trillion.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a compound annual growth rate of almost 22%.
Which is just astronomical.
That's not just like a random number. That's like a complete
totally
reshaping,
sea change.
yeah, of how we think about.
Yeah, across all these industries.
That's right.
From cars to how we get our energy.
From automotives to energy, everything
It
right.
changes everything.
Even like right now, the growth is insane.
It really is.
I mean, global EV sales,
Yeah.
they jumped 25% in 2024,
Wow.
hitting something like 17.1 million vehicles.
Yeah.
And then just this past February, 2025,
Yeah.
sales shot up another 50% compared to last year.
That's right.
So think about this. 1 in 5 cars sold globally last year
I know.
was electric.
It's really remarkable.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and what's even more interesting is that at the beginning of this year, we're seeing a bigger shift to battery electric vehicles
Okay.
over plug-in hybrids.
Oh, like fully electric.
Yeah, people are going all in.
People are really choosing those.
Yeah.
So who are these people? Who's leading this charge?
Well, if we're talking about leading a charge, you got to talk about China.
Yeah.
They sold a whopping 11 million EVs in 2024.
Wow.
That's a 40% jump from the previous year.
That's huge.
Yeah, and one company in particular, BYD,
Okay.
they're really dominating the market there.
So what about other parts of the world? How do they compare?
Well, it's a mixed bag.
Okay.
Europe, for example, saw some ups and downs.
Okay.
Germany's sales actually dipped after they made some changes to their subsidies.
Interesting.
But then you've got the UK, where they have this thing called the ZEV mandate,
EV.
which basically requires a certain percentage of car sales to be zero emission.
Okay.
And that's really fueled some serious growth over there.
Makes sense.
North America had a pretty solid 9% rise in sales in 2024.
Okay.
The U.S. hit 1.3 million, which is,
Not bad.
it's not bad.
Yeah.
But it'll be really interesting to see how things shift as policies evolve.
Wow.
And then what's kind of fascinating is the rest of the world outside of these major markets
Yeah.
saw a collective increase of 27%.
Wow.
And we're seeing some surprising adoption rates in places you might not expect, like Singapore.
Really? Okay, so it seems like everyone's getting on board with this EV thing, but like what's really pushing this global acceleration?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. It's definitely not just one thing.
Okay.
There are several factors at play.
Like what?
Okay, so first off, governments are stepping up with incentives to make EVs more affordable.
Yeah.
Tax breaks, rebates, all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the tech side, battery technology is constantly improving.
Right.
We're talking longer range, faster charging times.
Okay.
And this is key because it addresses those range anxiety concerns that people have.
Makes it more practical.
Exactly.
And the charging infrastructure itself is expanding too, right?
It is, absolutely.
You see more charging stations popping up?
Yeah, well, it does vary from region to region.
Cool.
Some areas are definitely ahead of the game, but
Yeah.
overall, the trend is positive.
And the price of EVs themselves is coming down too.
Slowly but surely.
Slowly but surely.
Yeah, they're becoming more and more competitive with traditional gasoline cars.
And I think a lot of it has to do with people just wanting a more sustainable option.
Absolutely. There's a growing awareness of the environmental impact.
Yeah.
And people are actively seeking out ways to reduce their carbon footprint.
Yeah.
And EVs are a big part of that.
Okay, so that's like the good stuff driving this EV revolution.
Right.
But are there challenges too?
Oh, yeah, for sure. There are still some roadblocks to wider adoption.
Like what? What are the main ones?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles is still the upfront cost.
EVs are still more expensive to buy than traditional cars, right?
Generally speaking, yes, although that gap is narrowing.
Okay.
And then there's the issue of charging infrastructure, particularly in areas outside of big cities.
Rural areas.
Yeah, exactly. We need way more charging stations in those places to make EVs a viable option for everyone.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And range anxiety is still a thing for some people,
Even though the ranges are getting better.
even though they're getting better.
Yep.
And then there are those pesky supply chain issues that we've all become familiar with.
You know, those can make it tough to get your hands on certain models.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's say you've decided to go electric.
Yeah,
The sheer number of EV models out there can be overwhelming.
it really can be.
So let's break it down a bit.
Okay.
We'll start with sedans.
Good.
You know, you've got your Tesla Model 3, which is super tech focused.
That's right.
You've got the Hyundai Ioniq 6, known for its long range.
Yep.
Then there's the BMW i4 eDrive 35.
It's sporty.
Sporty, yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, the Lucid Air with that insane range.
Oh, yeah. The Lucid Air is a real head turner.
Now, if you're looking for an SUV,
Okay.
there are tons of great options too.
So many.
The Tesla Model Y is like a top seller.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got the Hyundai Ioniq 5.
Yeah, stylish.
Stylish.
Yeah.
And really fast charging.
Right.
The Kia EV6 has this cool bidirectional charging feature.
Oh, yeah, that's super useful.
Yeah, you can actually power devices or even your house with it.
Exactly, in case of an emergency.
That's amazing.
And then there's the Cadillac Lyriq, which is attracting a lot of first-time EV buyers.
Yep.
And the Ford Mustang Mach-E, which is a really compelling alternative.
Mm-hmm.
And for families, there's the Kia EV9 with its 3 rows of seating.
Nice.
Yeah.
And let's not forget the Rivian R1S with its crazy off-road capability.
Yeah, and potentially the longest range in its class.
Oh, and we can't forget about the trucks.
Oh, yeah, the trucks are making a big splash.
Yeah, you've got the Ford F-150 Lightning, which is
Mhm.
basically electrifying an American classic.
And then there's the Rivian R1T, which is like built for adventure.
Yeah, with that cool gear tunnel.
Oh, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, and then you've got the Chevy Silverado EV, which is boasting some serious range.
Okay.
And of course, the GMC Hummer EV pickup truck with its crab walk feature.
That's the one that can, like, drive sideways, right?
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
It's crazy.
And then there's the Tesla Cybertruck, which is generating tons of buzz.
Yeah, it definitely has a unique look.
You can say that again.
So with all these new EVs hitting the roads, what does the future look like?
Well, if we believe the projections, if the future of transportation is electric,
Yeah.
the Edison Electric Institute, for example,
Yeah.
they're forecasting a whopping 78.5 million EVs on U.S. roads by 2035.
Wow, that's a lot of EVs.
It is a lot.
And that would be almost 72% of all light-duty vehicle sales.
Yeah, a pretty significant shift.
Huge.
Yeah.
But that means we're going to need a massive amount of charging infrastructure to support all those EVs, right?
Oh, absolutely.
How much are we talking?
Well, potentially over 42 million charging ports in the U.S. alone by 2035.
Wow, that's like a whole new industry.
It really is a
Yeah.
massive undertaking.
And I imagine government policies are going to play a big role in all of this.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You know, like the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yes.
And California's 2035 zero-emission vehicle mandate.
Those are big drivers.
Yeah.
So let's talk about actually owning an EV.
Okay.
What are the pros and cons?
Yeah, like why would someone choose to buy an EV?
Right. Well, there are a lot of benefits.
Mm.
For starters, your fuel costs are going to be significantly lower.
Yeah, because electricity is cheaper than gas, right?
Exactly. In fact, some estimates say it's like paying under $1 per gallon.
Wow.
You're also looking at reduced maintenance costs.
Really? Why is that?
Well, EVs have fewer moving parts,
Oh, that makes sense.
so there's less that can break down.
Yeah.
And then depending on where you live, you might be eligible for some nice tax credits or rebates.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about those.
Yeah, the U.S. federal government offers up to $7,500 in tax credits.
It's pretty significant.
It can be,
And of course, there's the environmental benefit of zero tailpipe emissions.
right? No harmful pollutants spewing out into the atmosphere.
And they're quieter to drive too, right?
Oh, yeah, much quieter.
Yeah.
And a lot of people find them more fun to drive because they have that instant torque.
Oh, yeah, they're quick off the line.
Exactly.
You can charge them at home, which is super convenient.
Yeah, no more trips to the gas station.
So it sounds like a lot of upsides.
There are, but it's important to be realistic about the downsides, too.
Okay, like what?
Well, as we mentioned before, the initial purchase price is still a hurdle for a lot of people.
EVs are still a bigger investment up front.
They are.
Okay.
And then there's the concern about battery replacement costs down the line.
Right. Batteries don't last forever.
They don't, and replacing them can be expensive.
Yeah.
And while charging at home is convenient, it does take longer than filling up a gas tank.
True.
And we already talked about the limitations of the charging infrastructure, especially in certain areas.
Yeah.
And then there are some broader ethical concerns around the sourcing of materials for those batteries.
Right.
So there are definitely things to consider.
Okay, so we've talked about the present and the near future of EVs.
Yeah.
What about the long-term impact on fossil fuels?
Well, if you look at the projections, the long-term trend for fossil fuels in transportation is definitely pointing downwards.
Okay.
EVs are leading the charge towards a more sustainable future.
So are fossil fuels going away completely?
Well, it's unlikely that they'll disappear entirely anytime soon.
Okay.
They'll probably still be relevant in the short to medium term, especially for things like commercial and heavy-duty transport.
So like big trucks and airplanes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Those are tougher to electrify.
Makes sense.
But the speed of this transition away from fossil fuels really depends on a few key factors.
Like what?
Well, technological advancements are huge.
Okay.
You know, if we can make batteries even better and cheaper,
Uh-huh.
that will accelerate the shift.
Okay.
And then there's the role of government policies.
Right.
You know, things like incentives and regulations can really influence the market.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, there's consumer adoption.
Yeah.
The more people embrace EVs, the faster the transition will happen.
So it's kind of like a combination of all those things working together.
Absolutely.
Okay, so final question.
Okay.
What about the future of batteries themselves?
Oh, that's where things get really exciting. There are some incredible breakthroughs happening in battery technology.
Like what kind of breakthroughs?
Well, one of the most promising areas is solid-state batteries.
Okay.
They have the potential to be safer and more energy dense than current lithium-ion batteries.
And I hear Toyota's actually trying to bring those to market.
They are.
Yeah,
They're aiming for mass production,
Uh,
which is pretty huge.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So what else is there?
Well, there's lithium sulfur, which could offer even higher energy density than solid state.
Wow.
And then there's sodium-ion batteries, which are emerging as a more sustainable and potentially cheaper alternative.
That's cool.
Yeah, because sodium is way more abundant than lithium.
Right.
And then there are things like silicon anodes, which are being developed to boost the capacity of existing lithium-ion batteries,
Okay.
and graphene, which is being explored for its ability to enhance conductivity.
So these are like next level battery technologies.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They could really be game changers for the entire EV revolution.
Wow. So as you can see, the electric vehicle market is not just some passing trend.
Not at all.
It's a dynamic and rapidly changing landscape.
Yeah.
And I think what we've learned today is that it has huge potential to really reshape how we think about transportation.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time to be following this industry.
From those crazy sales figures we talked about to the regional dynamics and, of course, those cutting-edge developments in battery technology,
Mm-hmm.
there's just so much happening.
And it's all moving so quickly.
We've really only scratched the surface today.
We have.
But I'm hoping this deep dive has given everyone a much clearer picture of like where things are and where they're going.
Me too.
Yeah. So thinking about all of this,
Okay.
I want to leave everyone with a question.
Okay.
What aspect of the EV market do you find the most compelling?
Yeah.
Is it the speed at which people are adopting EVs?
Mm.
Or the huge task of building out all that charging infrastructure?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's the potential of those next generation battery technologies?
That's a good one.
Yeah. It's definitely something to think about as we move further into this electric era.
Absolutely.
It's a fascinating time to be alive.
It really is.
Yeah.
Exciting times.
Thanks for joining me today.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, this has been great.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.